Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a horror film, The Church. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins in the Middle Ages. A band of glorious knights decked out in their full regalia, storm through the woods and stop before an ominous cave entrance. An old man holding a torch waves at them to come inside. He points at a strange symbol, etched on a boulder near the entrance, and shows it to the knights as proof that the people they are searching for are inside. The old man leads them through the dark tunnels, and they emerge at a well-lit space, with a river running through it. Huddled around the river is a small group of women, wearing bedraggled clothes. Most notable is a young and beautiful woman with piercing blue eyes. The old man accuses her and her people of being witches, who brought deadly diseases to the local people. He says that they have the cross on the bottom of their foot, as a symbol of them trampling on Jesus Christ and all he represents. Since the knights symbolize Christianity's crusade to rid the world of evil, it is part of their mission to hunt down those who serve the devil. This makes those women their enemy. The so-called witch steps forward and asks the knight not to hurt them. For a moment, it seems like he would not hurt her. He silently lifts a hand to her face, as if to touch her beauty. But a second later, his grip tightens and squeezes her skull. The witch crumples to the ground, dead. The old man eagerly yanks the binding from her foot and reveals the cursed mark of heresy below it. Having confirmed that the people residing in the village within the caves are devil worshippers, the knights set about slaughtering each and every one of them. They decapitate the villagers, and string them up naked, as blood rains everywhere. Once finished, the knights put all the dead bodies in a mass grave. They are scared that the whole place is cursed now, so a priest suggests that they build a church on top of the mass grave, so they can contain the evil underground. The knights do not notice that one child has escaped the carnage. But one knight chases her through the woods and spears her through the eye. As a final touch, the knights place a wooden cross, with a stone engraving on top of the mass grave. Centuries pass, and the only remaining reminder of the mass grave is the cross, which is still visible in the church's catacombs. The modern-day church itself is large, sprawling, and Gothic in design. It's a popular spot for tourists and Catholic devotees. Aside from sporting marvelous architecture and art, the church also has an impressive library. Its new librarian, a young good-looking man named Evan, walks into the cathedral on his first day. He is stumbling around lost, when several art tools fall from scaffolding several feet high. Evan narrowly dodges the falling tools, and when he looks up to see where they came from, he is greeted by a pretty artist called Lisa, who is painstakingly restoring the frescoes in the church. The two quickly make introductions, and she asks him out for coffee later. Evan makes his way upstairs, where the library is located. He meets a young girl, who introduces herself as the churchwarden's daughter. Moments later, the snobby old bishop comes in, and snipes at Evan for being late. After a hard day's work cataloging the library's books, Evan goes downstairs to the catacombs, where Lisa and a small crew are starting to break ground at the very spot where the mass grave is located. Lisa is puzzled at the cracks that are starting to form and becomes certain that there must be something below. However, she needs to inform the Heritage Society first, before she can proceed to renovate that part of the floor of the catacombs. After coffee with Evan, Lisa goes back down to the catacombs, and starts working on one of the pillars near the mass grave. Peeling back the surface, she discovers a piece of parchment, hidden inside the pillar. She excitedly takes the parchment to Evan's office upstairs. Lisa suggests that they inform the bishop about her discovery. But Evan persuades her to leave the parchment with him, so he can decipher it. Later on, the bishop has dinner with one of the church's priests, Father Gus, who is warm and kind. With them are the churchwarden and the reverend, who mocks Father Gus for not knowing Latin. Evan takes Lisa home from the church. While in the car, he reveals to her that he took the parchment with him, because he wants to study it on his own. His initial perusal led him to conclude that the parchment once belonged to the Knights Templar, a religious order that waged war and violence in the name of Christianity during the time of the Crusades. Intrigued, Lisa directs him to her small cottage at the edge of the city, so they can look at the parchment together. While Lisa freshens up in the bathroom, Evan excitedly tells her that he believes that the catacombs of the church may also hold a similar historical treasure that was pillaged by the Knights Templar during the Crusades. Lisa comments that his extreme interest in finding treasure seems dishonest to her, but Evan unabashedly answers that he does not want to spend his life with dusty books. His candor enchants her even more, and the two start to tongue massage. Their moment of passion leads them to her bed. Evan suddenly gets the idea that the letters on the parchment paper are mirrored. Finally able to understand the writing, he translates out loud that he needs to find a stone with 7 eyes. Invigorated, Evan tells Lisa that it's interesting that the church is the only cathedral where there is no king or other notable figure buried. The lone tomb inside it is that of its builder, Evan theorizes that they prevented other people from being buried there because they did not want anyone else to find whatever was hidden underneath the catacombs. Meanwhile, the church warden's daughter sneaks out of the church wearing a tight-fitting dress. She uses a secret passageway to bypass the locked church doors. She walks around the city, rebelling against her parents' conservatism. When she gets home, her father shouts at her. The daughter tries to lie, saying that she was just praying, but her outfit reveals that she went somewhere else. The next day, Lisa is strolling inside the church when she suddenly gets a vision of a man on horseback chasing her. Around the same time that morning, Father Gus is doing archery practice on the church grounds. He is about to let an arrow loose toward the target when he gets a vision of a knight aiming an arrow at him. That night, Evan goes down to the one tomb inside the church, but he doesn't find any stone with 7 eyes anywhere on the grave. He turns his attention to the doorway right in front of the tomb. Evan enters it and finds a dark and labyrinthine hallway leading to the catacombs. He chips away at the dirt, covering the stone on top of the cross, and it reveals that the stone has 7 eyes, just like the parchment says. Evan grabs a pickaxe and opens the tomb underneath. Suddenly, a mysterious blast of air emanates from the hole and is inhaled by him. In a trance, he hoists a heavy sack from underneath. When he opens it, a skeleton hand reaches out and chokes him. Evan loses consciousness for a while. When he wakes up, he sees that he has a jagged wound on his arm, where the skeleton hand grasped him. He is about to look down again when he hears footsteps coming down the catacombs. It is the church warden's daughter, using the secret passageway to sneak out again. Evan hides behind the pillar as the daughter leaves her coat behind and then disappears into the darkness. Moments later, her father comes searching for her. He thinks it's her daughter hiding behind the pillar, so he steps closer. Evan attacks the church warden, making him fall to the floor. Meanwhile, Lisa is sleeping on her bed when she gets another vision again. She is inside the church and sees the cross-shaped hole on the floor and the atrium filled with hundreds of candles. Evan manages to make it to the nearest payphone and calls Lisa. She awakens from her dream and answers the phone, but the entity that scratched his hands begins to possess Evan before he could speak to her. He turns pale and gray, and his hands act on their own accord, scratching out his own beating heart out of his chest. Lisa is befuddled by the phone call and goes to the kitchen to get some snacks. She returns to her bed and is disturbed by a goat-headed demon on her window. It breaks the window pane as she hurriedly locks herself in the bathroom with her telephone. She calls the police and then escapes through the bathroom window. Later, the church warden returns to his apartments in a daze. He washes his face in the bathroom and then turns to look at the mirror. He is shocked to see that his face is turning gray and bloody. The next morning, Lisa goes to Evan's office to tell him about the shocking event last night, but Evan is now acting strangely. He barely shows concern for her and tells her that he wasn't able to get into the catacomb last night. Evan then forces himself on her. Lisa fights him and extricates herself from his grip by slapping him. The church warden's daughter witnesses the slap and asks Evan what happened. He brushes it off and tells her that Lisa just panicked. The daughter dismisses it too, and sits at a desk in the library. Obviously, Evan is now possessed by the evil entity he released from the catacomb, and he begins to desire the church warden's young daughter. Meanwhile, a tour group of schoolchildren enters the church. One boy asks his teacher if it is true that if you press a secret point hidden in a Gothic church, the whole thing will collapse. However, the teacher laughs this off. A boyfriend and girlfriend also arrive at the church, but they are distracted by the jealous argument they are having. Evan corners the church warden's daughter and points a knife blade at her so he can remove her clothes. Fortunately, she knocks down the bookcase behind her and she is able to escape. The daughter runs to her father for help, but since he was attacked by Evan, he is also possessed by the same dark entity. He grabs his daughter and forcibly washes her mouth with soap in the bathroom. In the mirror, the church warden's reflection is replaced with a horrific demon face. The daughter escapes once again and runs out of the church. She bumps into a beautiful bride, wearing a resplendent wedding gown. The bride and her groom step inside and ask permission from Father Gus to get their photos taken at the church. Father Gus amiably agrees but asks them to make it quick. The church warden hurries to the confession booth, where a person is already waiting. In a shaky voice, he details that he has tried hard to shield himself and his family from the evils of the world, but evil has him now in its clutches. Father Gus recognizes him as the church warden and asks him what's wrong. He confesses that he is overtaken by the urge to do evil things, and he can no longer control himself. The church warden then punches the screen between him and Father Gus, and then runs out of the booth. He strides across the church, scratching a schoolboy and the groom in the process. The church warden heads for the catacombs and impales himself on a jackhammer in front of the mass grave. This act accidentally breaks a glass vial of liquid hidden inside the stone. The liquid slides out of the vial and triggers a series of pulleys and gears that seal the church shut. At that moment, the bride is taking a picture in front of the church doors. The doors close, and her veil and part of her voluminous gown get trapped in between. Meanwhile, the epitaph on the tomb of the church's builder flips and is replaced with a new engraving, describing that the mechanism they triggered was installed to prevent the evil inside the catacombs from ever getting out. The bishop translates this to Father Gus but doesn't let him know about the rest of the message. Chaos ensues inside the church, as the guests all scramble to find a way out. Father Gus urges the Reverend to call the police immediately. The Reverend rushes to the office to call the police, but is attacked by an entity. The groom becomes delirious, and strips off his clothes. The scratch on his cheek now looks inflamed, and he hallucinates that a fish-like monster is attacking him. The guests inside the church begin to suffer from the curse. The boyfriend hallucinates and sees his girlfriend in the arms of a gargoyle demon. The reanimated church warden skewers the teacher with a steel grate. One of the students kills his own best friend. The boyfriend and girlfriend manage to dig through the floor and emerge into a subway tunnel, but they are killed by a passing train. Meanwhile, the church warden's daughter gets a strange feeling while she's in a nightclub. So, she rushes back to the church. Father Gus tracks down the bishop and demands that he tell him the full story. The bishop reveals that he had gotten a hold of the parchment that has the location of the secret point, and when it's pressed, it can bring the whole church down and bury the evil beneath. However, the bishop now doesn't want the church to collapse and contain the evil. Instead, he wants it to spread like a disease and rightfully punish all the sinners of the world. Father Gus tries to wrench the parchment from the old bishop, but this accidentally causes the bishop to fall from the tower. Fortunately, he manages to get scraps of the parchment. Back inside the church, the bride stares into a gilded mirror and sees a reflection of herself rapidly aging. Consumed by her vanity, she could not take the sight of her beauty gone, so she scratches her face out in horror. On the other side, overtaken by a mysterious force, Lisa strips herself naked and walks to the atrium, which is now filled with candles like that in her vision. Father Gus goes to the bishop's office and tries to find a solution from the parchment scraps. The dazed Lisa lies down on the altar and is surrounded by the victims of the devil. They are chanting in Latin as the possessed Evan approaches Lisa and has intercourse with her. He transforms into a gargoyle demon while performing ritualistic intercourse. The church warden's daughter sneaks back in through the secret passageway and encounters Father Gus. She tells him about this passageway. The daughter stares at the ancient scripts depicting the history of the church and is put into a trance, channeling the spirit of the young girl who had survived the slaughter of the demon worshippers in the past. She reveals that after completing the cathedral, the priest who suggested that they build a church on top of the mass graves ordered the builder to be arrested on charges of heresy. But the truth is, the builder knew that the Catholic Church lied and framed the witch women for bringing deadly disease to the town, in order to strengthen the people's faith in Christianity as their savior against the devil. To keep him silent, the priest tortured the builder over a circular forge, and killed him by inserting the metal self-destruct mechanism into his mouth. After learning that, Father Gus orders the girl to escape using the passageway. He promises that he will follow later. He then returns to the builder's tomb and discovers the button that will reveal the builder's mummified corpse. Just like what the girl's vision revealed, the self-destruct mechanism was hidden inside the builder's mouth. Concurrently, due to the ritual, the bodies of the slain devil worshippers begin to rise and form the shape of Satan's head, indicating the rebirth ritual for those dead is almost done. Right then, Father Gus triggers the self-destruct mechanism, and the church collapses on itself, killing everyone inside. The movie ends with the church warden's daughter returning to the ruins of the church. She sneaks inside to leave flowers for her parents' souls. But just beneath the soil is the same stone with the 7 eyes. A hole opens in front of the daughter, signifying that the collapse of the church hasn't stopped the demon at all. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.